We're live. Okay. Hello, and welcome to the Literary Roadhouse Book Club. Today we're discussing Here Comes the Sun by Nicole Dennis-Benn. I'm Anais, and I'm joined by book club regular Gerald Hornsby. Hey, Gerald.
Hi, Anais. Just the two of us, eh?
Yep, just the two of us. This is one of those. We had a guest, and they had a scheduling conflict, and then we had someone else, and I don't even know what happened. It's got rescheduled like 1,000 times. So now it's here, the two of us. It's going to be the best one ever.
So yeah, sometimes you might think just forget the guest, just
yeah.
have us.
Also, there's a lot of other podcasts out there that are two people. Our insistence on 3 minimum.
Yeah, good point.
Other people have two. All right.
And we've got different voices and everything. So yeah, it's unusual. Go on.
So what was your overall impression of the novel?
I found it a very difficult read. There's a lot of mistreatment of women, which always sort of raises a red flag with me, which I always find uncomfortable reading. But I found the patois a little difficult sometimes and slowed down. But I realised it was there for a reason. So especially the sort of the grade of patois. She did something very clever with that, which we'll come on to. And but overall, I don't know. I don't know if I enjoyed it or not. It was a good book, I think. Yeah, hard one.
Yeah, you're kind of sounding a little bit where I'm at. Maybe a little bit more positive than that, but we read a few books on the book club, and sometimes when I talk to people and they're like, "Oh, I'm gonna start doing the book club," I'm like, "Talk to me first, and I'll tell you my favorite ones and start there." I don't know if this would be in my top 5 on this book club, but that doesn't mean that I would never recommend it. Like if somebody said that it's very specific. I think it has a very specific message. A lot of books do. I probably should have prepared this better. I guess what I'm saying is we're going to get into the issues that I had with it. But I think what it's doing is important. I just there's elements of the plot that I just found sometimes a little unbelievable. That just pulled me out a little bit. Even if the themes that she was exploring were important, well explored, there were some lines that just gutted me. A lot of the internal stuff, the thoughts that the characters had was just amazing. So there's it's I almost wish it could just be read this passage, it will change your life. But the plot itself is, I think, what bothered me, and I think we can get into that.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's start with some of the themes, right? So the novel takes place in 1994, and it explores a lot of really gut-wrenching themes. And one of them is how for poor Black Jamaican locals, the Caribbean island isn't a paradise, even as they work to make it idyllic for foreigners, right? So the inequality in tourism. Do you think that's still the case today?
I can't say that I know. I tried to find out and do some research on this. Certainly today, in terms of the past few years, it's still the case. I don't think things have changed that much, as far as I could tell. Certainly, the homophobia was an issue still in just a couple of years ago, and although the government said they were making steps to change things, and as we know, changing a sort of entrenched attitude in a whole group, in a whole society, takes a very, very long time. So I suspect, and I do know people who have gone to those islands and stayed in a nice little place on the beach and had a butler. And I don't. For me, I just think, no, butlers were like a century ago or something. I felt very uncomfortable with that.
I feel like the income inequality, the fact that even though a lot of local Jamaicans are the staff that makes tourism function, and tourism is one of the biggest industries for Jamaica. That I know that they are severely underpaid. Costa Rica was a bit like that too in tourism. I don't know if it was this marked, but that happened. But the question that I'm wondering, if that's still as it is the eminent domain issue here was really corrupt and messed up. Like the shell company, and like you're supposed to not appear like you're self-serving, but everyone is. The whole thing that Angelo did with the subsidiary. I wonder if any of that has changed or not. Like if there's a listener who's listening to this and knows, like please send it, because that's the part of it that seemed. All of it's ugly, but that part was especially infuriating. Like, it's not bad enough that you're severely underpaying the people who, without your hotel, would collapse. That part's already bad. But like, you're completely destroying their communities. It was really messed up. And I'm wondering if that has changed at all or not. Because the reason I'm asking this is because she set this novel in 1994 intentionally, and I don't know, like, why couldn't you have said it today? What has changed? But maybe it's not that something has changed. Maybe it's just so the author is Jamaican, and she is also openly gay, and she left Jamaica to escape some of those homophobic attitudes. So I wonder if she was just putting it in 1994 because that's when she experienced Jamaica firsthand the most. Or is it something else? Is there something here that was so much worse in 1994 that putting the story there just really drives home the point she's trying to make?
I don't think so. I suspect that it's probably very much the same. That level of corruption, that level of manipulation of people still goes on in all sorts of other countries. So I can't see why it wouldn't be going on in Jamaica and other sort of Caribbean islands. So I suspect it's as you say, that's the era that she knows best and she has experience of, and I would think that's why she set it then.
And we're talking about that exploitation of the locals, which is a sort of top-down exploitation. It's corrupt, it's unfair, it's really ugly. But one of the other themes is the way that there is a cycle of exploitation, that the women in the family, the main family in the story, so Grandma Merle, her daughter Dolores, her daughters Margot and Thandi, Merle, maybe it's Grandma Merle, they all exploit each other cyclically. Yeah. So there's Grandma Merle's attitude to what happened to Dolores. Dolores, at 13, was raped by a creepy uncle, and the grandma is like, well, you probably asked for it, kind of. And then Dolores exploits Margot, sells her at age 14 to a foreigner for sex. And then Margot exploits a whole bunch of women, including her younger sister's childhood best friend, Juliette, who now goes by Sweetness and becomes a prostitute. And then Sweetness ends up exploiting Thandi when she wants to get revenge on Margot, when she wants to make a little bit more money. Whew. So how did you react to this through line in the plot?
Oh dear, I was pretty disgusted, and it's. I think the author did a really good job of not stepping over the line to make it a cliche. Because she made it so very real, and so I totally believed it. And I think maybe for an author from a different country might actually have, without having an experience of it, might well have stepped over that line and make it a cliche and go, yeah, I've heard this story before. But it's so believable that the attitude of the parent, the abuser or the enabler of the abuse has, and the things they say, and and when and Margot is told that you're a weird kid, and you've got an interest in women, so this will cure you by selling you to this tourist, and you just
and the weird kid thing is that they're noticing that Margot is gay, that she's young, but they're noticing her that she's likely gay. So, but Dolores is lying to herself when she says she did that because she's trying to cure the gayness, which is already horrible. But she just wanted those $600, and she just she just wanted those $600, and she's adding another justification onto that because there's a lot of ways to pray the gay away if you're that inclined, if you're homophobic, and it's not sell your daughter into prostitution at age 14. You know what I mean? Like she wanted the money.
Yeah. Oh, that was the main driver, I'm sure, and then that was just excusing it to her daughter. That's one of the most difficult parts to read. That the acceptance of it and the exclusion, to excuse that attitude and that behaviour all the way down the line. And you just think and there is a saying that abused turn abusers, this just shows it in such stark detail.
There's almost a point where like I almost sometimes would struggle to believe it. Like there was almost a point where I was just like, I get it that the cycle of exploitation is real, it's well documented, the abuse turned into abusers. I think I was sort of going along with it, like what you were saying. It didn't feel too cliche. It felt like that could happen. The way, Grandma Merle's decisions, Dolores' decisions, Margot's decisions. And then the point where I sort of started to get a bit like, this is now starting to get a little too soap opera-y for me, where I started to lose me, was what happened in the end with Bandy, which we can talk about a bit. But that part, I just felt like, I didn't understand it. We can get to that in a bit because I want to keep focusing on these choices because we were already talking about like Dolores' decision. It was really about the money. She tried to justify it, that it was about, curing, quote unquote, her daughter's homosexuality. But, there were a lot of really ugly choices in this. And the way that Margot was constantly exploiting the women around her, the way that she frames Miss Novia, what was her name? Novia Scott. Novia Scott's up there, the hotel manager. That whole thing where she like sets her up in bed with Sweetness so that then she gets thrown out.
Yeah.
So what did you think of all the choice that they made, given the context, the environment, the opportunities? Yeah.
I think they just they saw people. Was it that they saw people as tools to get what they want? So Juliet is or Sweetness is used and then just sort of pushed away. So Margot is very, she's quite abrasive with people, and she's sort of there's no moderation of the sort of business attitude, like, and when she's going to be manager of the new hotel, and she gets all the new girls in, and it's just business, and you think it's a strange, I don't know, I have no experience of that kind of business and how you would behave, but I suppose if you're going to set up that business, you can't have any emotional attachment to the people that you're using to create that business. And I think it was the same with that setup with Sweetness, that she saw an opportunity, and it doesn't matter that she was, in a way she was abusing Sweetness herself by cajoling her and blackmailing her almost into spending the night with the manager. So she just had. She was driven, wasn't she? She just had this focus that she wanted the better jobs. She wanted the money, ostensibly to fund Sandy's education, but she felt she was owed this manager's job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And as you were speaking, I realized we're dwelling on the choices that the women are making and the way that their abuse sort of educates them in how to become abusers. But also the way that men are drawn in the story. There's only 2 men out of many, many, many men in the story who aren't complete scumbags or rapists or, or wife beaters or so, the brother Winston steals the cash. Dolores' brother Winston steals the cash and goes to America. Charles's father, Asafa, leaves the family with, he met like some tourist or something. Clover is a rapist. The guy that comes to the prostitution ring and buys Margot when she's 14. Alfonso's the worst. He just sucks. All the men in the story except for Charles and super minor side character Maxie, the taxi driver.
The taxi driver, yeah.
Yeah, those are the only two men in the story who don't suck. And when it comes to women, there's only one woman who doesn't suck, and that's Verdine. Or I guess minor side character Novia Scott. The hotel manager didn't really actually do anything wrong. She just existed. She kind of just did her job.
Yeah.
So Verdine and the hotel manager are the only two women who don't like. And I guess Thandie sort of doesn't suck, but like with the ending, I'm gonna dwell on too long, so I just don't want to jump ahead because I'm gonna be there forever.
Yeah.
I don't understand some of the Thandie stuff. I think that the end really, I think we'll get there. It did one thing brilliantly and then another thing so bizarre. Yeah. They just sort of ruined it, but then it did one thing so well. Okay, we'll get there.
Yeah, sure.
So what do you think about the portrayal of men and women? There's only two characters from each gender, a main one and a minor one that don't suck.
Yeah, I think that adds to the almost sort of cloying grayness, darkness of the whole book, and it's there's a little bit of light relief occasionally, a little bit of humor, but it's very little, and it's quite hard to sort of climb out of this, and the behavior of the people in it is just appalling, and as you say, there's no one to root for. Maxie, I love Maxie. Yeah. Poor old Maxie. He's just, he loves Margot, and just he's never going to get there.
And the reason I bring this up is because, like as you were saying, there was sort of a cloying, or just like it just felt so heavy sometimes that the heaviness of it almost didn't feel real. Like I struggled to believe that there's this many terrible people in one community. Especially because of the themes, you're sympathetic to what this community is going through, but then it's constantly being undermined by the fact that everyone sucks. Miss Gracie, the worst. Miss Ruby, kind of bad. Like everyone sucks, Yeah. So it's like, I wonder if reading this as a poor Jamaican in a village, if you'd almost be offended. Like, I wonder, like if you grew up a poor Jamaican in a village, would you be like, we don't all suck like this. A third of the men aren't rapists. Like, is there a part of you that's just like, wow, what a dark view of people in this village? I think that sometimes got to me. Not so much with the main women you're following in the story, because I get the through line of the cycle of exploitation, but all the minor characters around this just suck. Yeah. Like, they're just horrible. So it's very unkind sometimes. I think the portrayal, and
and even poor Charles, who's so offended by when he finds out what Clover did to Thandie. He goes and beats him up, and the guy dies. Okay, but then he has to escape, and you think, even him, he's ostensibly a good guy, an honest sort of guy. And yet he's had to run away and hide, and you think, there's no one I can root for here. There's the lesson is, if you're a good guy, you've got to escape. And
and not just that, but like no one looked at what he did and said, you know what? He's a hero. Let me not try to sell him out for money. Everyone was chasing him down for money because they put out the bounty on his head. Margot put out the bounty on the head of the guy who's defending. It's just, okay. Yes. Right? Like, it's like everyone sucks. Like, there wasn't a single person who said, you know what? Clover got what was coming to him. Not a single person stepped up and said that, which just felt like this community doesn't have any bonds between them. Like, no one is looking out for anyone else. And it's like, is that real? Or is this a really cynical, cruel portrayal of a poor community? Like there was a part of me that's like, am I being naive, hoping that actually some people would be like, no, we're not going to go after that bounty because this is Charles, he's one of ours. Like, am I being naive, thinking there'd be at least a few people who have that attitude?
I don't think so, because I think with all communities, I mean, even when you look back in time at sort of poor, really poor, dirt poor people. I mean, say in sort of East End of London, where there were robbers and crooks, but there were some good people. There were some
Right.
there were some sort of honest people who sort of tried their hardest and worked hard and made a living and tried to feed the kids and did the best for the kids. And if you have a character like that, you can say, great, here's the shining light, here's what we should aspire to. But they were all really appalling.
No one defends him. Everyone turns on him.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's like, well, it was a long time ago. You shouldn't care about that rape. Like, it wasn't even that long ago. Thaddeus 15, she was 9. Like,
yeah. That's and you hear that so often that in historical abuse cases that come up, and people do say, oh, it was a long time ago. Why are we digging all this up now? No, you dig it up. It's important because it sends a message and it says this is not acceptable. No matter who you are, this is not acceptable. And it's the same with this. It's as you say, it's only 6 years, so that they should have said, Clover, you got what you deserve, boy, and give him a kick or something. But
yeah, and the thing is, I'm not saying every single person in the village should have responded that way. It's just there was no variety. Like I understand there's some people who are going to go for that boundary. I understand there's some people who are going to say let bygones be bygones, which is bizarre when you talk about the rape of a 9-year-old a few years ago. But there's people who are going to say that. But there's no one who is Team Charles. It's just very strange. Like not even Thandie's mother is Team Charles. No one.
Well, Juliet is Team Charles, and she
her brother.
Yeah, but there's no one, and the cynical way that Margot suggests putting the bounty on his head so that they can get the development of the new hotel going again. And you just think, what? That's the guy who beat up the rapist of your sister, the rape of your sister.
Yeah, I just that I think it was just bad. It was just so much like darkness, negativity, bad people, bad motives, exploitation, that there just came a point where it's like really no one has any redeeming qualities except for like 2 or 3 characters. You know what I mean? Like it was just very Juliet could have been a good one. Could have been someone forced into prostitution because of bad circumstances, and then in the end she does this to Thandie, and you're like, never mind. You know what I mean? Never mind. Everyone sucks.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, so I that bothered me. Like I'd love to know. Like, does anyone find this portrayal of poor people in a village in Jamaica a little offensive or accurate? I don't think it's accurate. It's too much. I can't imagine.
No.
Yeah. So, but. And like I said, the main family, the cycle of exploitation there is doing something important. And a big part of that exploitation that happens there, the exploitation that Thandie is under, initially, it's Dolores and Margot pinning all their hopes and dreams on her and making her like their get out of here ticket. And like, yes, they're paying for her schooling, but there's a lot of pressure on her. And that the book's also examining, the value of Black women in society in Jamaica. And not just Jamaica, more broadly too. So what did you make of Thandie's decision to undergo skin bleaching? And Miss Ruby, in one of those skin bleaching scenes, goes through a hierarchy of race. Like, what did you make of that?
That's a bit bizarre. But you see people doing things to their bodies to change who they are and to make themselves more attractive to other people, or to better represent who they are.
But do you think that's what's happening here?
I think so. I can't remember why she originally said she was going to do that. Did she say?
No, I have to push back. There's no way she's doing this as an expression of who she is. I think this was probably my favorite theme. My favorite theme, anytime Thandie was thinking about her Blackness, wanting to become whiter, that pain she was going through, everything Miss Ruby was saying, I think was most poignant for me. Like I was just, it like broke my heart. It's because Blackness is associated with being ugly. Can you imagine growing up thinking you're automatically ugly because you're Black and you need to, bleach your skin in order to get a better job, make better money, have better opportunities. That's terrible. Like that, you know, and it's not the first time that I've heard that, but to see it, just the way that it was written, and at Daddy's point of view when she's alone, when she's thinking about that party she wants to go to and she's bleaching herself, the amount of like pain that she's putting herself in, it's not because she feels white. It's not because she's expressing herself because she's white. It's because she thinks it's the only way she's going to get ahead. And it's just heartbreaking, especially when
And wasn't she? Didn't her skin have a blacker tone than the other kids in her school? Was that it?
She was the darkest one. Yeah, she's darker than Margot too. Margot is what Miss Ruby said. If you're a bit more high yellow, you can be someone's mistress, right? Like that was part of the hierarchy. Is like if you're super, super black, you're going to be a maid, you're going to be a servant, you're never going to send to anything. If you're a little bit lighter, maybe you can be a mistress, you can get a little bit of money. Like it was just like, you know, horrifying, but crazy, I don't think it's necessarily wrong. You know what I mean? Like it's
what, wrong as in terms of incorrect?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, yeah, it's wrong morally.
Morally, yeah.
But I don't think Miss Ruby is incorrect exactly. I think she might be exaggerating to a certain degree. I don't know, but you know, she was basically like, if you're going to be black, you need to. It's one of those, and people have said this. If you're a minority, you need to be twice as good. So a very dark black woman, her education, it's not good enough for her to be educated. She has to be like the supreme valedictorian of her class, right? Like it's like the next level. She can't be a mediocre B student. That doesn't work. Yeah, that I think that was my favorite theme of those that were explored.
Yeah, I did, and you saw, and the author did a really good job of describing and showing how much it hurts and how painful it was, and the fact that she had to wrap herself up in cling film or something for like permanently. It was you know, it just, you can't imagine walking around going to school wrapped in cling film under your uniform. It's crazy. But it is. But that's what she obviously thought. That's what she needed to do to get ahead, because she was the darkest one in the class. So she needed to do something about that, because she'd been told you're never going to have a future.
And Miss Ruby may not be incorrect about that, right? And you know, then she goes to this party and she has bleached her skin. She is lighter. She goes to this party. Everyone's paired up during the slow dance. There's one other boy who isn't even that light, right? He's like a handsome looking, like mixed race boy. And he sees her look at him across the dance floor, like to dance with him, and he just poofs, will not. Will not. It's gutting.
It is heartbreaking, isn't it, for a young girl to think that's what she needs to do to get on in the world. But we see it, don't we? We see it all the time.
Yeah, especially since by all accounts she is beautiful. It's just her blackness that makes people unable to see. So, you know, there's this interesting point at the end where Alfonso sees her and he's very much like, oh, what a body, what a face, like she's so gorgeous. So sexually, her blackness doesn't make her ineligible, just in terms of any sort of any other kind of merit. Like I was saying, education, anything else, her blackness gets in the way. When it comes to sex, oh, fine, now she could be, now she's hot, now she's sexy, and that's so infuriating. You know what I mean? Like when it comes for sex, now she's beautiful, but when it comes to, you know, anything, and it's also just infuriating that as a woman, it even matters if someone thinks you're beautiful as to whether or not that means that you're educated or worthy of a good position in life. So she has both things, right? That's intersectional feminism. We did it, right? It's the confluence of being a woman and being black. It doesn't mean you get both. It means you get this new thing that's uglier than either one of them. Yeah.
And Alfonso is treated Margot in the same way, didn't he? That you know, she was okay for sex and whenever he wanted it and however he wanted it. But you know, when it came to recognizing that she had qualities and that she had the ability to do things in the business, sometime let's go upstairs.
Exactly. She's only good for one thing.
It's
that was definitely my favorite theme, I think. That was my...
And it was well done too, wasn't it? It wasn't Oops, I've gone buzzy. Guys, back again. Yeah, it's kind of strange, isn't it? Kind of strange.
You're getting audio issues.
It seemed to go buzzy in the headphones, so I think it's
Could be
okay now.
Yeah. Yeah. So Miss Ruby says that women's worth is tied to the color of their skin. But Dandy's own mother, Dolores, nope, it's only what's between her legs. So what did you make of those two sort of different views? Like Dolores's very cynical. Yeah.
It's oh, I don't know. It's sort of it seems to I sort of come back to the patois thing that I liked. So what the author showed is the differences in attitude over the generations, and she also showed that by the patois because Dolores's patois was very, very difficult to penetrate, very, very thick, and Margot's wasn't, except sometimes it was a little bit, but not very much. And I think those attitudes, Dolores's attitude was so entrenched and so so sort of solid. So I don't know how to describe it. It was like sort of, excuse the term, black and white. It was, this is what they're good for, and that was it. There was no other discussion as far as she was concerned.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, I'm fine with that level of exploitation, abuse, horrible attitudes in the main family because we're exploring things. I wish there was a portrayal of a good Black mother. I guess Ella, Verdine's mother, she was abused by her husband, and but again, because everyone sucks. But Ella herself wasn't an abuser. But I wish there was some balance. Like, if you're gonna give me a Dolores, can you give me a woman like Dolores who is poor into this village and isn't like this? Like, give me someone. Yeah, it was rough. It was really rough.
And she could have created a lot of conflict and tension between those two characters and between the good character. That maybe that would have added a sort of an extra dimension, but it was pretty much all in the over the dark side.
Yeah, and like I said, part of when you see like the whole village is sort of like this is when sort of like that really horrifying homophobia happens. Verdine's having dead dogs thrown into her yard. There's people writing stuff on her house. They call her a witch. They run her out of the market. They're throwing rotting vegetables at her. And it so what was your reaction? There was at times where the homophobia, to me, the way that it would sort of manifest, at times it felt a little too soap opera-y. Like, it was like, really? Like, but then other times maybe that's accurate. Maybe that is how it is. Like, I don't know. What did you think?
Maybe, yeah, maybe. I don't know. It did feel kind of, in a way, it felt. I agree with you when you say it sort of felt soap opera. It is very. There is no sort of middle ground with this. It's anybody with sort of homosexual tendencies is sort of run out of town, is hated and vilified. But actually, reading up on some stories from Jamaica, I think it was like this. Homosexuals were dragged out and killed. I think it was, having looked at it, I think it seems a reasonably true interpretation of what was going on.
Yeah. Like the stuff with the dog and the writing on the wall, like that one I didn't question. I think it was the market scene where I almost felt a little bit like, man, like, I think it's the thing again. I keep saying there isn't a single voice that's like, oh, whatever. There isn't a single voice that's like,
no,
shrugging at it, like, let it go,
Yeah. It's a good point. It's
except Charles. Charles is the only one who kind of feels bad for her and then does garden work for her.
Good old Charles, who kills people, sort of by accident.
Sort of. Yeah, he didn't really kill him, but the guy had a heart attack afterwards on his way to the hospital. Yeah.
So that was quite good, sort of showing that he was getting retribution for what he did to Thandi, and so he beat him up. But then the death then creates that sort of that sort of mob mentality, which I think probably applies to the homophobia issue as well. That you can't stand out against the mob and say, why don't leave him alone, because you'll then suffer as well. That's why I said right at the beginning, I think it takes a long time to change the attitudes of a whole society.
Yeah. But you said earlier that with all of the abuses the women suffered, it made it sort of difficult to read. And I felt it was I don't think the abuses themselves would made it difficult to read. It was more just the grim view of communities in general. Like there was no hope, no light. Felt heavy. The fact that it seemed like this is going to continue this way forever. Like there was no hope of change. Felt really heavy for me. Did you find it believable, the abuses, or did you feel it was exaggerated?
The fact that I felt I reacted so strongly against it meant that I certainly believed it in the aspects of the story, and it didn't sound, this stuff happens and worse. So it's definitely possible that it happened. So but it's the attitude of the people around the abused children that you just can't understand. I find it horrific that a parent can have that sort of attitude to the abuse and rape of your child, and it just continued. It just, oh dear, no.
Well, going to that, right? So Dolores was having that attitude, and then you're thinking Margot is different when it comes to Thandi. She's exploiting other people, but when it comes to her own, she's protecting Thandi, and she wants Thandi to have a never life. There's all these lines where so that Thandi never has to do the things that Margot had to do. And yet at the end,
what?
Thandi, when Margot's like, well, what do you want out of your life? And Thandi, a teenager, doesn't give the answer Margot wants. Margot says to her, make me proud, which is what she always says to the girls when she ships them off to go sleep with men for money. And it's because Thandi's about to go sleep with Alfonso.
Yeah.
So what did you make of this ending?
What? I just thought that was the only point where I thought, really? Not. It just seemed so convenient. I didn't understand. I got why Thandi was there. That she'd learnt about Margot. She'd learnt about what was going on.
No, so but she didn't know it was Margot. What Thandi wanted was that surprise of when who walks in, it's Margot. She knew it was a woman. She didn't know it was Margot. Like Thandi was not Thandi. Sweetness was setting up this whole thing. I didn't understand why Thandi went in. I didn't understand why Thandi went in when Charles is screaming at her not to. I didn't understand her motive in this because Sweetness hadn't explained how this would save Charles. Why would this save Charles, right? That was supposed to be her motive. I found the ending really bizarre and melodramatic for that reason.
Didn't she? I thought she was going in to rob him when she was examining all his paintings, and he'd got all these paintings stored, and she was.
I thought she was going to rob him.
No.
No.
Oh.
No. What would money have done anyway? Money doesn't save Charles here. Except maybe to get him out of the country, maybe, but how?
Yeah.
No,
well, I got the impression that she was going to rob him in order so that they could both get away, and she could set up, a home somewhere long way away with Charles.
No, because Sweetness was like she knows the person who had put out the bounty, or it was supposed to be something about that, but it just didn't make sense. This plan made zero sense. Like, I don't understand why Thandi went along with this, and that bothered me. And it seemed like she only went along with it so we can have that moment where Margot says, "Make me proud," which I both love and hate. I love it because at the beginning of this book, you think, oh, it's Margot and Thandi versus Dolores. The cycle is going to break. These two sisters, this is what we're rooting for. And then by the end, you realize, no, Margot's a villain too, just as bad as Dolores, and sucks. And there is no hope. And now Thandi's probably going to be sucked into prostitution by her own sister. And everything sucks, right? So, like, there was this beautiful way in which at the beginning, you think Margot's the person you're rooting for. And by the end, she's as bad, if not worse, than Dolores, right? So that flip was great, but it made no sense. It made no sense that Thandi was there, and I don't think it made sense that Margot completely changed her attitude about Thandi because Thandi gave one wrong answer.
Yeah.
Well, not even because Thandi gave one wrong answer, because Thandi's priority isn't, that's basically what it was. It's like Margot is incapable of love. She is incapable of just loving Thandi for the sake of loving Thandi. As soon as she realized that Thandi's priority isn't Margot, abandons her, feeds her to the wolves. Whew.
Yeah.
It's like melodramatic. It's like very like, oh my God. And those last two fights, the one in the office between Sweetness and Margot, that dialogue was very over the top. And the one between Thandi and Sweetness when she arrives at the shack where Sweetness is hiding Charles, and Sweetness is like, you thought you were better than everybody else, and now you're here, was very over the top. Both of these were just like, wow.
Yeah. It's sometimes you wonder whether towards the end of the book whether the author's sort of up against a deadline and are not paying as much attention to the quality of the dialogue as maybe she did before, because that did seem quite sort of stereotypical and as we said in the other podcast, it's a bit like a soap opera really, that it just didn't come across. That whole sort of end sequence, just very, very strange. And that Margot just, because Margot had spent so much time, and I liked, she'd spent so much time getting the money so that she could send Thandi to college and become a doctor and not have the life that she had, and Thandi, was studying hard, but then wanted to be an artist. I loved that side of it. I loved the. Oh no, you haven't frozen. Sorry. So I loved that about Thandi, but then she just sort of falls into the same. And
I don't understand how. I don't understand how. I don't know why she was there. It makes no sense to me. I don't get it still. But I do like how Margot, for a big chunk of the book, you think she's doing this for Thandi out of love. And then by the end, you realize, no, it was just purely selfish. The minute Thandi is no longer useful to her, discards her. It's rough. Margot ends up being like the greatest villain by the end of the book, when at the beginning of the book, she's set up as the heroine you're supposed to be cheering for. And that flip is really dramatic. Yeah. And even what she does to Verdine, it's so messed up, where she's trying to get Verdine to sell her house for nothing to benefit Alfonso so they could, the eminent domain stuff. This is her lover. This is her girlfriend. And she's completely throwing her under the bus because it suits her.
Yeah, it's... I don't know. It seems like Margot sort of, yes, the author had set her up pretty well at the start to, and shown, we know what she was doing, but she was doing it for a good cause. And she wanted to better herself and all this sort of stuff. But then she seemed to make Margot just almost like a completely different character. She sort of pushed it darker.
But I think over the course of the novel, she did change, right? Because in the beginning, she's a woman working at a hotel, not in a managerial position, who is making money by also selling herself to clients. And then she has a secret love affair with another woman that she has to keep secret in a homophobic Jamaica. And it's her, and it's everything she wants to do for the people she loves, which is Thandi and Verdine. And by the end, she's thrown both of those people under the bus. It's all about herself, and she's alone in her big, fancy villa. So I think her character arc is just her becoming this kind of heartless, selfish, completely villainous person. So that character arc, it's like, wow, what a story. Like, it's great, like, storytelling. Like, it's a great character arc. But the way that you get to that end point, it's like, why is Thandi there? Like, what? I don't get it. Why is Thandi there? I don't know. It was really out of nowhere.
No, I can't. As I say, I'm pretty sure, looking back on it, I felt that she was going to get. She wanted revenge on Alfonso for something. That there was definitely a reason for her being there.
Yeah.
And when she was looking at the paintings, I thought, she's because you didn't know why she was going there. But when she was looking at the paintings, I thought, she's going to rob him and use the money to get Charles away so they can live together somewhere else, maybe in the USA or something. But then, it takes a very strange turn.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about just the writing?
I found it difficult at first. It has a style which is sort of kind of strange. The style was sort of, it didn't flow very well for me. And as I say, the early introduction of the patois, made me sort of think, oh, am I going to, because you have to stop and read it slowly and interpret what Dolores was saying particularly, and so you can, and then you sort of carry on and read the rest of it, and but overall, but once after a chapter or two, then it was fine, and I settled into it, and I wouldn't say it was the easiest read, technically, but it was okay.
That's funny. I had an opposite experience. It actually flowed pretty well for me. The patois, sometimes I get a little caught up, but after a while I just started like memorizing, like this is this. I would just like read something out loud and figure it out that way. But I had a different experience in that it flowed. Like for me, it went pretty quickly. Like I'd sit down and there goes 10% in the Kindle, and it flew by. There were a lot of like moments where she would describe things that were very beautiful. I enjoyed the writing quite a bit. And I especially, like I said, enjoy those introspective moments when the characters are thinking to themselves about their situations. Those were the strongest points of the book. Like those parts were fantastic. And it's a great way to do, because she's not there because sometimes when you're doing a character's thoughts, it's hard to do it in a way that doesn't feel too spot on. Like they were just unreliable enough that this is just her perspective. Like you see the way Margot lies to herself on the end as to why she says to Thandi, make me proud. There's this whole thing about like, oh, you have to like let her sink or swim, let her make her own follies. Yeah, bullshit, Margot. Like that's the way she's excusing it. Margot's being an unreliable narrator. But but so that was great. But still honest enough where you're getting the themes that you need to get. I just thought those sections were great. They were fantastic. And they flowed really well.
Yeah. So overall, I can't. Like I said at the start, I didn't enjoy the book because it was so the subject matter was so difficult. But technically, it was pretty good for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we're ready for 1-sentence ratings. You kind of just did yours, actually. you basically just did your 1-sentence rating. I think mine's just a little bit like, if you want to read about these themes, they're explored really well. The cycle of exploitation, skin color, race, class, all of that's explored really, really well. If you're coming for like a really good plot, like there's some parts of this that just feel a little melodramatic. It's just like, sometimes it just feels a bit over the top, very grim. It's kind of rough to read about a village of people who are the worst. Like just a whole village of villains. Yeah.
It's a tough read in terms of the subject matter.
There's like no light.
But still, no, it's a challenging book, that's for sure.
There's like no hope. Like, oh, here we go. No hope. Sorry, no hope for anyone. So Next month, we're reading Manhattan Beach by Jennifer Egan. As you read the book, let us know your thoughts on Twitter with the hashtag LRH Book Club or join our private readers group on Facebook. A link is provided in the show notes. It's also called Literary Roadhouse Readers if you want to look it up. Anyway, life sure is tough for podcasts with few iTunes reviews. Help us out of our review poverty by leaving reviews on iTunes and Stitcher. It helps make our show better by helping others find us. Money, 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 man. It helps us up. Oh, no, I did too. Oh, no. I forgot my own outro. See, I wrote this like, what, a week ago now? This is what happens when you have to keep rescheduling things. Yeah. So, I get the second part. But we need more than reviews. We need actual money too, because it helps us upgrade out of our indie podcast shack so go ahead and make a contribution at Patreon at Literary Roadhouse. Well, no. So please make a contribution on patreon.com/Literary Roadhouse. Every bit helps. And maybe one day we'll have a house like Radine's. Thought the house was cute. The pink stone house. Yeah. Okay. So this was a great discussion, even though it's just the two of us. We got to an hour.
That was a good. Yeah.
Yeah. Almost an hour.
Yeah, 50-odd minutes. That was pretty good.
Yeah, 50-odd minutes.
Whew.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll be back in a month to discuss Manhattan Beach. Bye, Gerald.
Yeah. Bye, Anise.
Bye.